Hello, friends. Jane Curcio with Breaking Bread for You with a presentation from John's Gospel, Chapter 5, the story of Jesus healing the paralytic at the Pool of Bethesda. The story is only found in John's Gospel, and I will present it in a way that you might not have heard it before. Bear in mind John's purpose in writing his Gospel to reveal the true identity of Jesus of Nazareth as the Son of God who came in the flesh, in opposition to the Gnostic Jesus of Greek mysticism, who could not have come in the flesh, since they believe that all flesh is evil. But as the scriptures attest, had the Son of God not come in the flesh to die for our sin, we would not be saved from the penalty of sin. In this frame are the remains of the pools of Bethesda, discovered in 1888 by German scholar Herr Conrad Schick, next to St. Anne's Church by the Lion's Gate in the Old City of Jerusalem, called the Sheep Gate in John's Gospel. And I say pools because Schick found two of them, separated by a portico, one being 50 feet long and the other 60 feet, perhaps one used by women and children and the other by men. The original pool was built during the 8th century BC by King Hezekiah, mentioned in 2 Kings 18:17, with the second added during the 3rd century BC. Since the first pool is way too large to have been a mikveh bath for Jewish purification, historians agree that its original purpose was to wash sheep that were slated for the temple sacrifice, given that it is in close proximity to the temple. Yet, at the time of Jesus, the pools were used as an infirmary for the helplessly disabled and diseased. Now, the Jews held to the tradition that an angel would occasionally stir the water to signal those lying around the pool to immerse themselves in order to be healed. But that tradition wasn't Jewish, but originated in Greek Gnostic mysticism that was adopted by Hellenized Jews. To give you a bit of background on this tradition, the ancient Greeks venerated the head god of medicine, Asclepius, his statue on the right of this frame, whom they believed had the wisdom to heal disease. And healing centers were established in Asclepius's name, referred to as Asclepions, that were constructed around natural springs that were associated with divine healing. Bubbling spring water in the ancient world was referred to as living water, thought to hold purifying and healing properties. If you will recall Jesus offering the Samaritan woman at the well living water, and himself, which she would have connected to spiritual wholeness. Depicted in this frame is the first Asclepion at Epidaurus in southern Greece, where the sick would lay on mats around spring-fed pools until spirits stirred the water, signaling them to immerse in the pool for healing. And if that hadn't happened, they would remain there at night in expectation of the god Asclepius visiting them in their sleep to tell them the names of herbal concoctions that would heal their disease. Upon awakening, Asclepiad physicians would question them about their divine prescriptions, which they would then dispense to them. The concept of healing baths is not foreign to our own culture, in which mineral bath establishments were popularized in the US and Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries. Visitors would go there to drink the mineral water and bathe in it, that were promoted to have healing properties. Now, the Asclepion healing centers are considered to be the first hospitals in Western antiquity, established during the early 5th century before Christ. Hippocrates, the founder of the Hippocratic Oath, a version of which is sworn by med school graduates today, was an Asclepiad practitioner at the Asclepion on the Isle of Kos. And in this frame is a reconstruction of Bethesda and the Holy Land model of Jerusalem. If you've toured Jerusalem, you most likely would have visited this incredible display. Now, John introduces the story of Jesus healing the paralytic at Bethesda, saying, "After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches." Now, the name Bethesda is derived from the Hebrew for house, beit, and of God's grace, chesed, anglicized Bethesda. But if the name was originally from the Aramaic, Bethesda would have meant house of disgrace. And for the ancient Jews, they believed that sickness, disability, came from one's sin or the sin of one's parents. And in verse 3, it continues to say, "In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water." And in verse 4 of most of your Bibles, it reads, "For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first, after the stirring of the water, was made well of whatever disease he had." Now, verse 4 concerning the angel stirring the water was not in the older New Testament manuscripts, but later added by an editor, attempting to explain the business about the moving of the water in verse 3. That is according to the Greek tradition. However, if you use the New American Standard Bible or the English Standard Version, you will find that verse 4 is omitted altogether, with the numbers jumping from verse 3 to verse 5. And rightfully so, for John would never have suggested that this Gnostic tradition was valid. The editor would have been more in keeping with John's purpose in writing his gospel to have said that the people believed that an angel came to stir the water. And in verse 5 and 6, John wrote, "Now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, 'Do you want to be made well?' The sick man answered him, 'Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me.' But Jesus, being aware of the pagan origin of this man's belief, does not correct him. Instead, commands him, 'Rise, take up your bed and walk.' And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed, and walked." Jesus' purpose in healing the paralytic was to demonstrate to him, who was most likely a Hellenized Jew, that healing belongs to God and not superstition evolved out of Greek mysticism. And this all fits well with John's purpose in his gospel in identifying Jesus of Nazareth as the incarnate Son of God, as opposed to the Gnostic Jesus who did not come in the flesh. And then John wrote, "And that day was the Sabbath. The Jews therefore said to him who was cured, 'It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed.' He answered them, 'He who made me well said to me, Take up your bed and walk.' Then they asked him, 'Who is the man who said to you, Take up your bed and walk?' But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, a multitude being in that place." And this section ends with Jesus finding the man he healed to exhort him to sin no more, suggesting that his sin had caused his infirmity in the first place. Incredibly, the man failed to express any gratitude to Jesus, and then he went and told the Jewish rulers who had healed him, knowing that they vehemently disapproved of him healing on the Sabbath. Verse 15. Yet Jesus is not looking for gratitude here. His purpose was to demonstrate through the healing of perhaps the worst case there that divine healing does not come from Greek gods or spring water stirred by spirits, but through the incarnate Son of God. Jesus didn't just happen to pass by Bethesda that day and decide to go in and heal someone, but he purposely went into that pagan establishment to take back from Satan and false religion what was due him and him alone, the glory of being the true living water, the divine source of healing. And about healing the man on the Sabbath, John wrote, beginning in verse 16, "For this reason the Jews persecuted Jesus and sought to kill him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, 'My Father has been working until now, and I have been working.'" Here Jesus is identifying himself with God, which doesn't sit well with the Jews. For in verse 18, John wrote, "Therefore the Jews sought all the more to kill him, because he not only broke the Sabbath, but also said that God was his Father, making himself equal with God." Yet nowhere in the Torah does it forbid miraculously healing the sick on the Sabbath, as Jesus had done. But according to their oral law, had Jesus made a potion of herbs and gave it to the man outside of an emergency situation, they would have been justified in judging him for breaking the Sabbath through grinding, which is one of the 39 categories of work outlined in the Talmud that are forbidden to be done on the Sabbath. Certainly, their pettiness concerning healing on the Sabbath was not based on love for God or for man, but on fear, irrational fear of being punished by the Almighty, as they had 5 centuries before, when, due to their gross rebellion, Jerusalem and the temple were sacked and they were exiled to Babylon. Now, about the Sabbath, Jesus never broke it, as God's law, the Torah, defines breaking the Sabbath, which would be doing everyday work, such as selling or buying, farming, house cleaning, cooking, or lighting fires. Sabbath rest is about ceasing from labor to focus on God and his work and the family. Certainly, healing the sick is about focusing on God's attributes of compassion and mercy. And Jesus justifies his healing on the Sabbath, beginning in verse 19, where he said, "Most assuredly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself but what he sees the Father do. For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all things that he himself does, and he will show him greater works than these, that you may marvel. For as the Father raises the dead and gives life to them, even so the Son gives life to whom he will. For the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son, that all should honor the Son, just as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him." Verses 19 through 23. Jesus ends this discourse with the gospel message and some end-time prophecy, beginning in verse 24. "Most assuredly I say to you, he who hears my word and believes in him who sent me has everlasting life, and shall not come into judgment, but has passed from death into life. Most assuredly I say to you, the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live." And he continues to say in verse 26, "For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son to have life in himself, and has given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man." Now, the Son of Man is a Jewish designation of the Messiah, taken from Daniel 7. And in verse 28 it says, "Do not marvel at this, for the hour is coming in which all who are in the graves will hear his voice and come forth, those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of condemnation." And he said, "I can of myself do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is righteous, because I do not seek my own, but the will of the Father who sent me. Verse 30. Now to summarize, Jesus of Nazareth proved to the paralytic at the Pool of Bethesda and the witnesses thereof that he was the Son of God in the flesh who took back what was due him. And that is the glory for being the true living water, the source of life and healing. Here he demonstrated that healing does not come from Greek gods and spring-fed pools, but by God's mercy and grace alone. And Jesus continued to defend his deity, his sonship to the Father, to the Jews who judged him for having healed the paralytic on the Sabbath. I close with thanking you for viewing this lesson, and I pray that you will all be blessed in all areas of your lives as you learn of God through studying his word.